From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Donald Trump faces new charges from special counsel Jack Smith as Ron DeSantis fires about a third of his campaign staff and tries for a reset. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnist Kim Strassel and Bill McGurn. Welcome and happy Friday. This week we've been waiting for rumors of new charges, something forthcoming from the federal grand jury from special counsel Jack Smith. A lot of chatter that it might have to do with the January 6th riot and Trump's behavior in the run-up and in the wake of that. Then on Thursday, the special counsel released a superseding indictment that deals with the documents, the classified documents held at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's treatment of those documents, adding a few charges, and specifically one where the special counsel says that President Trump sought to delete the security camera footage at the Mar-a-Lago club. Kim, what do you make of this? And do you suppose that those January 6 charges are still forthcoming, or is this the extent of what we expect from Jack Smith?
Well, let's talk about the charges that just did get filed and what they relate to. So these are claims that a property manager at Mar-a-Lago went to see an IT expert there and said that the boss apparently wanted security camera footage deleted and attempted to get that IT expert to do that. This matters because apparently, and according to this superseding indictment, Trump had already been notified that the grand jury wanted that security camera footage. And so the charges include a count of attempting to alter, destroy, or mutilate evidence, also a charge of trying to induce someone else to do so. Interestingly, there's no evidence that the IT expert actually did this. He is said to have pushed back at the time, saying that he didn't know how to do it and he didn't know if he had the authority to do it. And obviously that footage did end up in the hands of Jack Smith because it was the basis of some of the prior charges. We can get into what this actually means from a legal perspective. I find it kind of interesting that he felt the need to come back with yet more charges. I don't know what that means in terms of his own confidence in the case. But then, of course, as you mentioned, Kyle, we've got the question of whether or not there are going to be January 6th charges. There have been varying accounts of that. Trump's lawyers came in to talk with Smith. In the wake of that, the president put out a statement saying that it wasn't clear that they'd been given specific charges that were going to come. Other accounts suggested they are forthcoming. It seems that at this point, Jack Smith has just decided that he's going to go all in and try to hit the former president with as many things as he can. The wisdom of having gone down this road in the first place is, I think, still extremely questionable, but this is where we now are.
On the point about this security camera footage, part of what makes the case here is the timeline. So the superseding indictment says that on June 24th at 1:25 p.m., Trump Attorney 1 spoke with Trump by phone regarding the subpoena for security camera footage. At 3:44 that afternoon, Trump's valet, Walt Nauta, received a text message indicating Trump wanted to see him. Less than 2 hours later, Nauta changed his travel schedule and began making arrangements to go to Palm Beach, Florida. At the same time, he was texting this IT supervisor at Mar-a-Lago, asking whether the IT supervisor was going to be around. The next day, Nauta met with the property manager at Mar-a-Lago. And according to the indictment, the pair went to the security booth where security video is displayed on monitors, walked with a flashlight through the tunnel where the storage room was located, and observed and pointed out surveillance cameras. So it sounds like they could not have been more clear about what they were talking about. That was on a Saturday. And then Monday morning, the property manager apparently went to this IT employee, asked how long the server kept that footage, said that the boss wanted the server deleted and, quote, "What are we going to do?" And Bill, so we don't have any direct quotes or anything from Trump on this point about the security camera. Jack Smith seems to be, again, relying on that timeline to make the case that all of this was done at President Trump's direction. It's not clear. The IT employee is not named in the indictment, but there's some suggestion, suspicion, I guess, in my mind that he is possibly working with the special counsel, has spoken to them. And then you got to think also that prosecutors are now telling the valet and the property manager at Mar-a-Lago, both of whom are now indicted co-conspirators, that life would be a lot easier for them if they flipped and they explained to the special counsel what exactly Trump asked them to do.
Yeah, I think what's happening is, as Kim said, he's piling up charges. And these are not novel charges. They're not novel interpretations of the law. It's pretty straightforward, and there seems to be a lot of evidence. So I think legally, again, the question whether he should have bought them is a different question. Legally, I think they're very troubling for Donald Trump. And from what I've seen about what we expect on January 6th, more troubling than those charges, which seem to be based on a further stretch of the law.
I think that's right. On the obstruction point, if you get a subpoena for a surveillance camera and your employees the next day go and try to delete the surveillance footage, that seems to be much more straightforward than the question of a former president retaining documents from his time in office. But Kim, on that latter point, this also seems to undercut Trump's defense, because Trump has argued that under the Presidential Records Act, he had some right to documents from his time in office, or at the very least, there's enough ambiguity in there to make it difficult for a jury to, beyond a reasonable doubt, convict him of retaining national defense information under the Espionage Act. And I personally was skeptical of that argument in the first place, but it does seem to cast it in a different light that President Trump was trying to delete the security footage in order to cover his tracks, as it were, because you'd think that if he had a solid argument under the Presidential Records Act, he would say that. He would make that straightforwardly and take that to the court or take that to whoever was pursuing the documents. And instead, he seems to have tried to hide these boxes of records even from his own lawyers.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we could end up with a situation here where the old line that the cover up ends up being worse than the crime. And it's really quite astonishing, too, because look, if the defense, as you note, is the Presidential Records Act. It's not just that he arguably has a decent defense with that, but also, especially because this is uncharted territory in that we don't really know the exact contours of that law. We've never had a case like this before. And that would all work in Donald Trump's favor in front of a jury. And I think, it was very notable that Jack Smith didn't even talk about the Presidential Records Act in the first indictment, because even that team seems to understand that there are some potential complications. But now, if it's indeed the case that there was an effort to get rid of security camera footage, that very much goes to the suggestion that Donald Trump knew he shouldn't have these records. And that completely undercuts his case that he had full authority to do so. And you've seen that Jack Smith has been doing this. He did it with his first indictment as well, too, where he noted an effort that he claimed, which was to move boxes around and keep them outside of the reach of investigators when they came down to search his house. This was along the same lines, arguing that somehow Donald Trump knew he should not have these records. I think that this latest indictment, though, this evidence is even more compelling on that case. Now, we will see what the president's response is to this. You never know. Maybe they'll make a more innocent explanation for what was going on here. But on the face of it, it certainly looks troubling for his potential defense.
Bill, what do you make of the point that Kim raised earlier, the wisdom of bringing these charges, even if you seem to have the facts and evidence? I mean, remember, we're having this conversation. This superseding indictment came out in the same week that we had real questions about whether Merrick Garland, as Attorney General, should appoint a special counsel to oversee the investigation into President Biden's son, Hunter. These IRS whistleblowers, IRS agents, law enforcement agents saying that their investigation was hampered by the Justice Department. And so there are questions about two standards of justice. And also remember, there's no allegation that President Trump was trying to sell these classified documents or doing anything other than hanging on to them, it seems to me, out of sheer stubbornness. And so I think there's some people who might look at this pattern of facts and think, the FBI already got the documents back. Why are we going down this road of having one party's presidential candidate prosecute the next party's presidential candidate. I mean, at least in Watergate, there was a burglary.
Yes, Kyle, exactly right. Look, I think it's important when you go after a president, especially, justice must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done. I can't help but notice that these latest pile-on of charges come in the same week that Hunter's sweetheart deal blew up in court because they admitted it without precedent and they were letting the president's son get off with a rat slip. And it looked like a plot between prosecution and defense. So I think, as you point out in Watergate, there were sufficient Republicans that said, this is so egregious, we're going to join you in the call for impeachment. I don't think you're seeing that. I think it's just designed to further roil the waters. Politically, it's making Trump more popular than he was. Maybe the Democrats want that because they figure he'd be the easiest candidate to beat. But we've so cheapened impeachment and criminal prosecution for political matters. It's going to be hard to see a way out because people really see the unfairness.